COVID-19. Interministerial and multi-sectoral committees set up response mechanisms to deal with global scourge.
Vice President Oshibajo calls for proactive measures to curb proliferation of small arms and light weapons.
Supreme Court to resume hearing of former Imo State Governor's application for judgment review today.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss how to end Almajiri on the streets.
Now, the issue of Almajiri on the streets has again been in the public discourse in recent times, especially with the heightened security challenges in the country.
There's no doubt about that, Kirian. Now, the involvement of some young persons in criminal activities such as kidnapping and Boko Haram recruits, among others, has led analysts to conclude that, in a sense, part of the Almajiri system is to blame.
And in recent years, the Almajiri system throws the pupils into the streets, begging for arms to feed themselves in most parts of northern Nigeria, thereby making them to be ready tools for recruitment for various acts, both legal and illegal.
Well, as the situation continues to pose concern to all, governments at all levels, federal, states in particular, have also been taking measures to deal with the problem of the Almajiri, especially those who roam the streets begging for arms. And part of what we saw some years ago was the attempt to build and integrate the Almajiri school system into the formal education system.
But with the increase in the number of street beggars arising from the Almajiri system of education, some state governments in the northern part of the country are devising new strategies to solve the problem before it gets out of hand.
Well, amongst those states are Kano, Kaduna, Katsina and Sokoto, which, of course, as you just indicated, Kirian, are putting measures in place to ensure that the problem is contained.
In Kano State, for instance, Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje has constituted a technical committee to remodel the Almajiri system of education in the state as a way of solving the problem of children roaming the streets and begging for arms.
That's right. Now, that was the first step taken by the Kano State government. But now that the free and compulsory primary and secondary education program is in force in Kano State, now the Quranic schools are expected to be integrated into the mainstream government-controlled institutions, hence the ban on street begging by Almajiris.
Well, Kingsley, Kano is not the only state that took bold step to end the Almajiri begging on the streets. Kaduna, for instance, too, has been doing a lot with the promulgation of a law on street begging a few years ago.
Now, aside from those ones, Kano, and the others that we mentioned, Katsina and Sokoto too are making efforts to get the Almajiri off the streets. But why is it such an apparently Herculean task to take the Almajiris from the streets? We also heard in recent weeks the exhortation by the Emir of Kano, Sanusi II, with regard to what needs to be done to reform the Almajiri system. But what models or policies are best suited to end the unwholesome aspects of the Almajiri system, in particular, allowing the students or the pupils to roam the streets in rags, panhandling as it were? And what kind of synergy will be required of the northern states and their governors, plus other tiers of government, to address the Almajiri problem? Now, these are some of the questions we shall intend to pose to our guests as we discuss how to get the Almajiri off the streets in Nigeria. It's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Kirian Umayo, welcoming you to today's edition of the program, which will also bring you, as usual, our companion segments, which will include the newspaper review, business and others, and the course of this package. But first, let's take the highlights of the morning news with Nolene Ebel Ame. Good morning, Nolene.
Good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. The confirmation of the first case of coronavirus disease COVID-19 in Nigeria has led to the reconvening of the interministerial and multi-sectoral meeting on preparedness and response to the global scourge. Following the evaluation of issues revolving around Nigeria's efforts at protecting citizens from the disease, there was a renewed impetus and resolve by key players to synergize towards optimal action on the preparedness, response and containment of the disease in the country.
Strengthening measures to ensure that an outbreak in Nigeria is controlled and contained.
For the port health, I think there's a need to see synchronization or harmonization of the information from those who enter the country vis-a-vis the data that is being collected by NCDC.
Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed has again assured Nigerians that information dissemination platforms under his ministry have the capacity to sensitize the populace about the ongoing campaign to ensure that Nigerians live well in the face of the current COVID-19 pandemic.
While we have control of our FRCM platform, we don't have control of the state's platforms. And the state platforms are probably much more important for this kind of advocacy than the federal government platform. So please, we appeal to all state governments. And this is not political. This is about Nigeria.
We have the platforms, we have the units, we are ready. And once we have the contents, you can leave the rest to us. Assure you that the information will get to the right corners.
Away from health to security now, following the directive of President Muhammadu Buhari at the last meeting of the National Security Council for a review of the report of the Presidential Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo chaired the inaugural meeting of the review panel. He called for the development of a specific line of action to address the problems of small and light weapons in the country. The presidency has expressed deep sadness and regret over the latest bandits' attack in Kaduna State that killed several people and left many injured. In a statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President, Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu says, it is obvious that the bandits are unleashing their fury and frustration on innocent people because of the ongoing military and police offensive against them in the burning Gwari and Kaduru forest. This administration, he stated, would not be blackmailed by criminals to abandon the current military operations against them. President Buhari, however, assures the people of Kaduna State and other parts of the country that this government will continue to deploy all available resources to fight the cold-hearted bandits with a view to bringing them to their knees. To judiciary now, Supreme Court to resume hearing on the application filed by the former governor of Imo State, Emeka Ihedioha of People's Democratic Party, seeking a review of the February 13 judgment of the Apex Court, which removed him from office. This followed a request for adjournment by counsel to Ihedioha, Kanu Agabi's SAN, to enable him respond to a motion served on him yesterday morning while in court by the respondent.
Those of them who are not ready to cooperate with us, we will withdraw their names from the case.
It was for this same reason that this case was adjourned 2 weeks ago, or more than 2 weeks ago. I thought by today they would have put their house in order.
The federal government has expressed concern over the persistent hike in the price of homegrown rice. To this end, key players in the industry have been tasked to look inward and check the trend in the best interest of the nation. The Minister of Agriculture, Mohammed Sani Nanono, said this when he met with rice millers in Kano.
Investigation, the cost of paddy rice per bag is about 8,500. But the mill price at the retail level is 17,000. And that is outrageous and unpatriotic.
Nigeria is the #1 in open defecation in the world, and to turn the tide now, the Ministry of Water Resources requires more purposeful collection action. That is why the Minister Suleiman Adamu wants the media to take ownership of the implementation of the water, sanitation and hygiene wash as he met with news executives in the electronic media in Abuja.
All stakeholders is required to ensure that Nigeria attains open defecation-free status by the target year of 2025, and that we're able to achieve sustainable goals, target 6 for water, sanitation and hygiene, with leaving no one behind by the year 2030.
That's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kinsley and Kieran after this break. I am Nolin Ebelame.
Why you want to carry wala for your head? Don't be only you get matter for your mind. No. Forget your worries, don't on the door yourself. My brother, free your mind. Enjoyment, don't be crying. Trust the lead to live your life and be free.
Free your mind with Airtel Smart Talk and enjoy calls to all networks at a flat rate of 11 kobo per second. 7 naira fee on the first call of the day applies. Dial *315# to join.
Trust the lead to live your life, free your mind.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Helen!
Hey, where's your mom?
Today is her toilet day.
What?
Helen!
Toilet day? Tomorrow you're hosting a party and it's a matter of my reputation. Even if you spend your entire day cleaning with all this, it still won't be party ready. Impossible! Challenge? New Ticker Harpic 10X. Even if you use this solution 10 times, it won't give you the same cleaning like Harpic. Its new Ticker formulation sticks to the bowl better, removes old stains, and gives you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow!
New Harpic 10X gives me the freedom from toilet day. New Harpic 10X for 10 times better cleaning.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down. Do you have a job where you're going to?
No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Aliko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad or even end up in prison.
My name is Giato Adeza Adams, the General Manager, Corporate and Strategic Communications, Nigerian Port Authority. As regards the land borders closure, available statistical data from APMT, which is one of our terminal operators that is involved in container handling terminal, has recorded an increase of 200 TEUs of cargoes into their terminal as a result of cargo diversion from the vessels originally meant for neighboring countries. That shows you that the terminal operators is going to have an increase in revenue, which is accrued to the terminal, and at the same time, Nigerian Port Authority will equally benefit from the revenue increase. So that is the benefit we have derived from the border closure.
As you know, kids' exam time is exam time for moms too. The child prepares intensely, so does the mom, taking care of every little thing. But germs can ruin it all. What if he falls ill on his exam day?
Every single day is important for kids. That's why they need Dettol soap. It protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Everyday protection, everyday Dettol.
65 grams, now 150 naira.
Now it's time for our business package. The Nigerian stock markets braced for massive sell-off this week. Ronami Eginari tells us more.
In the wake of the coronavirus announcement on Friday, the 28th of February, operators in the capital markets have said that we may experience more massive sell-offs this week if the federal government does not respond to the COVID-19 threat in a timely and efficient manner. Managing Director and CEO of Apt Securities and Funds said that the losses recorded on Friday were not surprising, as similar losses were recorded in China at the start of the epidemic. However, if there is a positive announcement about the level of intervention by the federal government, markets will begin to normalize. Analysis of the week's trades show that the banking sector was the worst hit with an 11.8% decline, followed by the insurance sector with an 8.2% decline. The oil and gas sector went down 2.1%, while industrial goods emerged as the sole survivor with a 1.1% gain. On the global market, investors were encouraged by statements from the Bank of Japan and the Bank of England, both respectively promising to monitor markets closely and protect monetary security. The S&P 500 climbed in early trading on Monday morning, and European shares fluctuated between gains and losses. Oil prices also rose on Monday, reversing last week's decline as confidence grew that the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and Russia would agree to cut in production this week. COVID-19, now detected in 61 countries, has squeezed businesses across the globe, forcing companies to readjust their annual profit expectations and economists to lower their forecasts for global growth. The two leading palm oil producing companies quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Okomu Oil Palm PLC and Presco PLC, recorded a revenue decline in the year ended December 31st, 2019. Last year, in an effort to boost local production of various items, the federal government closed the land borders and included palm kernel, palm oil products, and vegetable oils on the list of items banned from accessing forex for importation. The federal government subsequently disbursed about 30 billion naira to local palm oil producers to help boost operations. The CEO of Okomu Oil Palm PLC, Graham Heffer, disclosed that palm oil companies benefited from the border closure, but the fall in the global palm oil market between quarter 3 of 2019 and quarter 4 resulted in the revenue decline. He further added that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement could make things worse if measures are not put in place to ensure smooth trade within the continent. The federal government has been urged to review Nigeria's trade policy if the gains and objectives of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement must be achieved. According to the Professor of International Economic Relations at Covenant University, Professor Jonathan Adeyemi Aremu, Nigeria's trade policy is outdated and not globally compliant. Now let's go to the floor of the stock exchange to see how the market fared on Monday, 2nd of March 2020. With business news, I'm Ronami Egirani.
Many thanks, Ronami, for the business package. Next for us is a review of some of the papers we have this morning.
Time to welcome Bayo Atayabi, our newspaper reviewer. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kiri. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yeah. Okay. We have about three newspapers to review.
Three newspapers that we have.
Yes. Let's begin with the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper, above the nameplate of the Punch, Nigeria needs 9,300 weather stations, has 54. That's according to NIMET. It's on page 38. Below that, North Central won't form joint security outfit, says Nasarawa State Governor. The story is captured on page 21. Power distributors' revenue collection rises to 473 billion naira. It's on page 30. And then Kaduna massacre, we won't negotiate with bandits, says El-Rufai. That's the governor of Kaduna State. The story is on page 26. And just directly below that, sacked Bayelsa deputy governor-elect wants to commit suicide, says Silva. Page 12 is where you get details of that story. Then, falling interest rates make commercial papers Eurobond attractive, according to experts. It's on page 27. Now, the lead story, Punch newspaper this morning, is on coronavirus. Government faces difficulties tracing Italian co-passengers. That's on page 2. With 2 riders, passengers on same flight with index case gave non-functional phone numbers. Federal government orders Turkish Airlines to replace crew members under observation. All right, now, just below the photo story on the Punch, we have some stories there. Lawan, Lalong, Jang eulogize Longjam during senator's burial. It's on page 21. Supreme Court readjourns Zamfara Imo's polls judgment review. It's on page 26. FCT begins clampdown on commercial motorcyclists. That's on page 12. Now, at the bottom, Diri visits Abeokuta, meets Obasanjo behind closed doors. Page 12 is where you get the story. And then hoodlums vandalize cars, steal parts in Lagos community. Pages 4 and 5. And then we're helpless over influx of herdsmen into Benue State, according to the governor of the state, Tom. The story is on page 44.
All right, let's take a look also at the Nation newspaper. The Nation newspaper, above the name flag, says INEC proposes 34 changes to Electoral Act. INEC proposes 34 changes to Electoral Act. Lawmakers for retreat, that's the rider to that. Benue herdsmen grazing with sophisticated weapons. Benue herdsmen grazing with sophisticated weapons. That's page 42. Buhari, Tinubu, and Abiodun greet Adeboye at 78. And below the nameplate, Nasarawa to upgrade facilities with 1 billion naira. That's on page 42. Then Kaduna villagers to Buhari, save us. We counted 51 bodies. El-Rufai promises death for bandits. And presidency, government will sustain offensive against bandits. That story is on the front page with a continuation on page 7. Now, you see the photograph there on the front page of the Nation newspaper. The caption is "No risks." Commuters on a train in Milan, Italy, cover up completely over fear of the coronavirus. That's in Milan, Italy. The late story, of course, is still on the coronavirus. COVID-19, 158 aboard plane with Italian can't be traced. Sanwo-Olu raises the alarm. Lagos schools for hand washing. New cases in Egypt and Algeria. And the last rider, we have discovered its cure. And then at the foot of the front page, it says, sacked Bayelsa APC running mate close to suicide. That's page 41. And 12.5 billion naira for Gombe irrigation. Details on page 42.
Well, let's start with Governor Nasiru El-Rufai. He visited the villages of Kerawa, Zariawa, Hashimawa, and Wazata, and all of them in Igabi local government area, where bandits had attacked and killed as many as, some record 50, some say 51 persons. Governor Nasiru El-Rufai asserted that there will be no negotiations with bandits in Kaduna State. He declares, while on the condolence visit to the people, that we don't give them amnesty. We don't negotiate with them. These bandits should be declared an insurgency and fought like Boko Haram. We are hoping that this banditry will end because the security agencies are now taking the war to the bandits. Governor El-Rufai also advocated for the security of the people, particularly to have confidence and give information to security people who are doing all they can to decimate the insurgents. In fact, there are indications that immediately after the attack, they were followed up and many of the bandits who were involved in that attack had been neutralized. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari, in a statement by Garba Shehu, has condoled the people of Kaduna State, especially Igabi local government area, and he has also vowed that they will sustain the ongoing military operations in that state. Apparently, the sudden attack on those villages is a consequence of the military operations in Berenengwari area as well as Kaduru Forest, where the bandits had been lurking. They are now taking vengeance on the people in those areas. Meanwhile, the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum, Mr. Timipre Silva, says that the former deputy governor-elect of Bayelsa State is very close to suicide. And Mr. Timipre says that someone said you forge your certificate and you have built all your life with integrity, and someone all of a sudden brings everything down that can lead to suicide. If you have a case in court challenging the authenticity of the certificate and a candidate that is different. But if you say it is a forgery and you have not heard from the person, then that is difficult and cannot be, it's a fact that has not been established. I think in law they say that whoever asserts must prove. There was an indication of forgery, which is a crime, but apparently there has not been investigation of that asserted crime. And there has not been any investigation to say that the various certificates from primary school, secondary school, NYSC, master's degree, that were all bearing different and conflicting names, had not been proved to belong to another person. Neither have they been proved not to belong to the person who claimed to be the owner of that. That apparently is putting the gentleman in the quandary.
You know, why the discrepancies in the first place? You have different certificates, bearing conflicting names. The conflicting names. So it is criminal, if you ask me, because you have a name. When you were born, you were given a name. You went to school, you enrolled in school, primary school, secondary, university. So why would there be discrepancies in the name and all that? And these things, I don't know why politicians take this issue of being in power as if the world has come to an end. If you make a mistake in life, you take it. And this got to Supreme Court. That's the apex court in the country. And I'm not sure, I don't want to believe the Supreme Court had that judgment without investigation or without finding out the truth of the matter. And if you want to bring yourself in the public domain, you have to clear yourself properly. You have to do a back check by yourself, to ensure that, look, I'm coming out as a clean person, especially when it has to do with governance.
I think forgery is a crime, Kingsley.
Of course, forgery is a crime.
So if it is asserted, that person should be prosecuted, especially if there's evidence towards that.
Well, that's a different issue. What happened in this case had to do with the election in Bayelsa. That's the governorship election. And to say that the decisions of the court, which is final. It's not one that, I mean, people can make their comments and so on and so forth. So the final decision by the Supreme Court stands. So nobody's returning to that. So, but if there are allegations of forgery, the Supreme Court does not on its own prosecute people. The High Court does not on its own prosecute people. The Court of Appeal will not on its own prosecute people. The powers of prosecution reside in the Attorney General of a state, because it would be seem to be a state offense, or the power can then be delegated to DPP. But I think that the issue is well beyond that, on the basis of the story that has been reported this morning. Kieran, you read that on the front page of the Punch. Now, assuming what Silva says, that Silva is the Minister of State for Petroleum, that the former Deputy Governor-elect is having suicidal tendencies, then the proper thing to do actually is not to ventilate this, but to ensure that it's on a suicide watch. It's on his, that's the most important thing, and they have to send in experts, you know, on counseling, giving him the right therapy. Are you with me? And just to recognize that, look, as the pedestrian saying goes, the downfall of a man is not the end of his life.
So he doesn't have to take
it's not the end of his life. Are you with me? Okay, suppose they ran the election and they were trashed in the course of the election.
Not only that, what about the governor-elect himself?
Precisely.
You know, who was already going to be a governor, chief executive of a state, who was denied that position because of the judgment. So what would he do? He would have come to suicide by now if he's taking in that direction.
Yeah, so those are the kind of examples that should be cited to the gentleman, assuming that his condition is that he's having or contemplating suicidal intentions. You know, to reassure him that this is not the end of his life. I mean, the governor-elect himself, on the eve of his inauguration, everybody saw the photographs. You saw the video. He was rehearsing. You know, riding in the van to inspect a guard of honor.
Took salute,
and then suddenly
the carpet was pulled from beneath his feet.
Well, then you had the court decision. So it's not the end of it's not the end of everything. It should stand firm. That's our appeal to him. I'm talking about now the gentleman with multiple names according to the court, so that he can pick up the pieces of his life, as it were.
Exactly. That's if he's not prosecuted.
And move on, yes.
Latest on COVID virus. So far, the 3 Chinese citizens who arrived on Ethiopian Airline to Plateau have tested negative to COVID virus. Another foreigner was also tested in Lagos. He also tested negative. So far in Nigeria, it is only the index case, the Italian, who has tested positive. And his condition is said to be improving. In other words, his condition is out of the critical stage. He's not getting worse. He's improving gradually. And they will continue to test. The 2 newspapers have reported about the inability to trace passengers on the airline. I think they are exaggerating the report. The report provided was that there were 159 passengers on the aircraft. Some of them have already left Nigeria and returned to their country. Others gave addresses and telephone numbers for which they could not be traced, but many of them have been traced. There were 3 airline personnel at the airport that were in contact. They have been traced. 25 workers at the Owekoro factory, they too have been traced. And there were 2 drivers who moved him around and an ambulance. All the drivers have been traced. Their vehicles have been thoroughly fumigated. And so far, we have only 1 index case, and that is the only one. Meanwhile, many states have been on the alert, and they include Benue, Kaduna, Katsina, Gombe, Ekiti, as well as so many states are now on red alert over COVID virus. So the essence is not to be alarmed, to be calm. And there are reports about a discovery of a cure by a former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, who is a pharmacist. Well, many people will wonder, if a virus is novel, is new, how come you now have a cure? There are similarities between SARS, that is the severe acute respiratory syndrome, as well as MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, and COVID-19 is also a respiratory ailment. Therefore, they are not too far from one another, and therefore, if there are indications that some medicament, as a pharmacist is now prescribing, can also cure COVID-19, it means we are heading towards a positive direction of having
but
a cure.
Iwu's assertion will have to be, put to test in the first place. He said the drug has been there since 2015. Just like you pointed out, that there are similarities, between SARS, MERS, and the coronavirus. As the case may be, they are all viral in nature, and of course they're not too far from each other, except that you have to develop different therapies, to address them. And because of the traits of this one, the biological traits of this one is a little bit different. So you perhaps is yet to tell Nigerians, where he, because you have to conduct a kind of test, either on guinea pig or on humans to be able to be sure that this can cure. That's most
usually when drugs are found like that, there will be clinical tests for a specific period before they are now applied to humans.
Well, part of the story, and we can see that on page 7 of the Nation newspaper in greater detail. Iwu is saying that his research group had identified and patented a possible treatment for coronavirus as far back as 2015 because of the importance of remaining ahead of emergent infections through research. He said the drug discovery project started at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and continued in the U.S. when he was a visiting scholar at the Division of Experimental Therapeutics of Walter Reed Army Institute of Research in Washington, D.C. Let's note this. In 2014, Professor Morris Iwu, he was here as our guest on Good Morning Nigeria when we were discussing Ebola. And he later was a member of a committee set up by the federal government to work out, solutions with regard to either treatment or cure. I'm not quite sure what the outcome of that committee work was eventually, but he did say a few things on that occasion, the details of which are a bit remote for me to immediately recall. But again, he has stepped forward and he has met the Minister of Science and Tech on this particular issue. So let's see what the next steps will be. But it's a curious point that for a novel virus, how could you have discovered the treatment 5 years earlier? Yes. So that's the key point. Exactly. All right, so let's take our editorial this morning, and it is coming from the Blueprint newspaper, Time to Curb Violence Against Children, and it's at page 12.
Well, the whole idea is happen on the need to provide security for children. The editorial is happening on the fact that up till now there are still challenges that some children, when they are born, they are not registered at birth. And birth registration is supposed to be free and should be universal everywhere. They also happen on the cost implications of children who are, because they are not properly taken care of, it is imposing on the nation. They are also alluded to boys, about 829, including about 108 girls, who were employed among the civilian JTF. Again, this is part of the abuses of children who are involved in a war area. And so the editorial is happening on the need to provide protection for children, especially if you recall that the Child Rights Act was signed as far back as 2003. Many states of the Federation are having problems with it because there are cultural nuances that is in conflict with the law, and therefore they have not apparently domesticated it in their own state. But there goes the argument that if there is a law, is a federal law, it is applicable to all parts of the Federation. And even any state enacts any law and it becomes null and void to the extent of its contradiction with the federal law.
I don't see any reason, for a state not to enact a law that protects the children. What kind of cultural or traditional nuances are we talking about here? We have seen on social media several maltreatment of children, even mother and daughter. I saw one just yesterday, just pierced the little girl's head, blood flowing everywhere by her mother. We saw the ones of 2 months ago where the lady just, flung the child as if she was in a wrestling bout. Right, so these are the things, and I don't see any culture in Africa that would not like to protect the children. These are toddlers. These are people who are below 10. Right, so I don't see any reason why.
Interestingly, a few incidences that have come to the public domain, the Nigerian police have rightly followed them up, and many of such parents have been arrested and they are facing prosecution. So They are being brought to the law.
All right, Bayo, thanks a lot for being around.
Thanks
We'll
indeed.
see you again tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get ahead with our item for discussion.
Love, you'll be able to unite, irrespective of tribe, religion, and culture. So we keep preaching on love. That is the only binding force. Let us love ourselves, irrespective of where the person comes from.
You are about to witness the commencement of the most stimulating and compelling contest on television. This contest is only for the strong, the intelligent, and the talented. Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
No perfect family may be under threat by germs. Germs can cause infectious diseases like diarrhea, typhoid, and flu. These infectious diseases are amongst the biggest killers of adults and children. In Nigeria, tens of thousands of children under the age of 5 have died due to diarrhea caused by germs. These illness-causing germs are everywhere. Dirty surfaces, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes, in unclean bathing water. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 capful. For surface cleaning, for first aid, for your laundry, in your bathing water, and to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Introducing Dettol with aloe vera. Soothing aloe vera, the power of Dettol, which is soft on skin and hard on germs. Be Dettol Sure.
We have a 30,364 individual, 6,437 household.
Boko Haram ya koro mu daga garinmu wanda ake cewa Doron Baga.
The government has done a lot of things. Some corporate bodies have also done a lot of things, but there's still a lot to be done.
Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1, the delicious combination of rich cocoa and wholesome goodness of milk. Just add hot water to get an instant chocolatey treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. Just add hot water. Available in stores at 18 naira.
You are still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Of course, to begin our conversation this morning on ending Almajiri on the streets, let's hear the views of some Nigerians on the issue as put together by Aisha Ubali.
I don't understand this Almajiri, but I thank God for Kano State Governor now that is saying that they should go back to the classroom. That any Almajiri you see in the highway should be arrested. So I thank God for Kano government now. They're trying to revive, to put them in one place and teach them. They should not allow them to go all over begging for alms, begging for food. It's not called for.
Turning them to nuisance within the society. I think if government can establish an institution that can take care of such knowledge they choose to impact on these children, if they can establish an institution that will incorporate that Islamic education, so that these children, instead of going on the street or having unhealthy training, so I think it will take care of that Almajiri.
To do away completely with them is, I don't think it will be possible, but it's gradually with time and awareness.
If federal government really want to end it, it will end it, because they have to. Maybe you should provide a school for them where they should go. There should not be all these streets begging. They have to eliminate it, and those give birth to them. They have to caution them, trace their parents, and caution them that should bring those people to order, so that they will stop. Especially where you go to some place, I will not call the unit of a place. For you to even buy things to eat, they'll just come and jump back and say, please, please, please. So what the federal government should do, should provide a school for them. Let's train them from the beginning.
Because it's their culture. It's not to beg. The only way to stop it is to appeal to them. They are the people to stop it. Many other, because they take it as a culture. Those who are well to do, they want those who worship them. That is the thing. To stop them, they are the people in charge.
right. Thank you very much, Aisha Obali, there for the Vox Pop. With us in the studios to discuss the issue, let's welcome Dr. Hamid Boboy. He's Executive Secretary of the Universal Basic Education Commission. Dr. Boboy, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much.
Wow. Also here with us in the studios is Mohammed Sabo Kiana. He's Team Lead Almajiri Rights Initiative. Pleasure to have you around on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.
And let us also introduce Salihu Tanko Yakasai. Is a special advisor on media to Governor of Kano State. Mr. Yakasai joins us from our Kano studio. You're welcome to the program. Joins us from our Kano studio. You're welcome to the program. Joins us from our Kano studio.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And also from Maiduguri, we have Miriama Dikwa. Miriama is an education specialist, Bauchi Field Office, UNICEF. Miriam Adikwa, it's a pleasure to have you this morning on our show.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone.
All right. We have the guest right here with us. We're expecting another guest. If we're able to get him in the course of the conversation, of course, he would take part in this from one of our other network centers. But let's begin first by just having an understanding of the Almajiri system in the classical sense before we start getting into the challenge of now getting the Almajiris off the street. I'd like to begin with Dr. Hamid Boboy, the Executive Secretary of UBEC. We keep hearing about the Almajiri phenomenon, Almajiri syndrome. What does the Almajiri system mean in the classical sense of it?
Thank you very much for asking the question. In the classical sense, the Almajiri system had been an integral part of the society in terms of the various Muslim communities, that had inhabited. Going back to Kanembonu, it started about 11,000. It's about 1,000 years old now in this part of the country. It provided the literacy required to produce the literati of the society. It provided an opportunity for the younger generation in terms of basic education. Basic education, memorizing the Quran, trying to read and write, going into other books, the various jurisprudential literature that was available in the various Islamic disciplines, but as well as the other sciences in terms of arithmetic. Usually applied in the area of jurisprudence for inheritance and other things, isn't it? Calculating percentages. In the area of astronomy, using, in fact, in Kanembonu, again, it's one of the oldest, isn't it? That you find, and that's the reason why you still have Bonu as the hub, isn't it? For a larger percentage of Almajiri, that has been there. It's something that had been an integral part of the society, that has served the society. It was never associated in the initial phase with begging. Why? Because society, just like we build a school, provide the facilities, didn't it? Get our children, get to that. That's what the traditional authorities were doing during that particular period. Providing for the scholars who would come, providing food, and even of recent, I think begging is a recent phenomenon. Most of us who grew up in these communities, isn't it? It's the individuals that take food to the house of the Malam. It's not the Malam children who come to beg or anything of that sort, isn't it? In that particular regard. And that's why it became an integral part, isn't it? Of most of the intellectual activities. With the coming of the colonial period, isn't it? We started now having other competitions within the educational sphere. The conventional education as we know it today, isn't it? Became an integral part of the society. Attention for over a period of time, isn't it, started shifting from seeing how do you take care of the Almajiri, isn't it, and integrate it with what we had, isn't it, in the northern parts of the country, it had been very slow.
In the Southwest, interestingly, the first integrated school where you are getting now the traditional along with the modern, isn't it, started much earlier in Lagos. The mission societies, isn't it, in Ibadan and other places, isn't it, began that process. And therefore, the whole idea of an integrated school that is now bringing in the Al-Majiri element. Al-Majiri, the meaning of Al-Majiri is Al-Muhajir, the person who has migrated, isn't it, who has now dedicated his life, isn't it, to the service, isn't it, of God. I think that integration had been very important. But somehow of recent, we started having a problem where the neglect kept on moving, isn't it, to a crisis point. The government intervention, again, isn't it, was also not strong enough to meet the population demands. Population increase had been very high, isn't it, in most of the northern states that now have the problem as an endemic one. And I think we have to understand that from that broad historical perspective to be able to appreciate the challenges that we have on the ground.
All right, and in the course of the discussion, we'll find out the point of derailment. You just reminded me of high school history, Kingsley, Kanem-Bornu Empire, well-organized empire, and I'm not surprised that Al-Majri system, came from there. It is a thought-out plan, from what I have explained.
May Idris alone.
It's really good to recall that. And let me bring you in. You're a younger Nigerian, but I'm sure because of your initiative that you understand what it's all about. Can we get any more explanation from you with respect to the meaning of Al-Majri and what the intentions were when it was established?
Thank you very much. Just like you said, I'm younger, and of course, like Dr. have said, I believe he has given a more elaborate explanation as to the meaning of Al-Majri and the original intent of the Al-Majri system. And for me, the intent, of course, is for the children to have the Quranic education. And part of what I also learned is the reason why it all began, and has to do with the fact that the scholars who are meant to teach these children were indeed far in between their parent, their original parent, and so the parent had to, send their children far away, just like we all do, send our children far away to other part of the country to learn the education, which is fine, And that, of course, worked during that period. And but the reality of today and had it that such a migrational aspect of the practice, where children will have to move from as far as Sokoto to Nasarawa Stadium to come and acquire this education, is part of the reason why we're having this crisis that we're talking about at the Al-Majri system. So with that, I'm talking much. I think the doctor said a lot about what the system is and what the intent is. And if you're going to reduce the whole intent of the Al-Majri system, is for the children to learn the Quranic education. I think that is the main intent of it. And I believe once we focus on that as well, we may be able to find a best approach to be able to come out of this present crisis we have on it.
Okay, just before we bring in the special advisor on media to the Kano State Governor, I want to stay with the two guests here at the Abuja studios. Now, if the original intent is to say, okay, migrate from point A to point B to undertake Islamic or Quranic education, after the Quranic education, what do you do as that Al-Majri? Or what were you expected to do as that, if you came in from Sokoto, for instance, to Nasarawa, and then you have done the Al-Majri thing, we're not sure what the duration of the course is, or what, after that, what next?
Yeah, firstly, let me make this point, that the issue of migration, again, it will depend upon the context. In most of the cases, from the historical records we have on these issues, you find that it was more of a domesticated system, where people were within their localities, and the localities were able to provide for the students. Migration takes place when the rural areas from where most of these children come from will not have the carrying capacity
to really feed these children, to take care of these children, and so on and so forth. And the scholars find it easy now to start drifting into the cities, as we have. And, again, we have to begin also to look at it within the socio-economic context, isn't it, of our entire nation. How do we ensure that we, reduce rural poverty, or at least increase rural prosperity to a point that it can have the carrying capacity of taking care of its own within this party? My argument had always been that even without Al-Majirchi, that migration will take place, and it has been taking place. The Chirani that you find after the harvest, isn't it? People will have to troop into the city to look for work. It can be the menial jobs, it can be the Maigadis, it can be other things, isn't it? But for Al-Majiri system, it had always now worked initially as up to maybe, isn't it? The 20th century, the communities had been able to cater for these students. They go to school, learn the Quran. There is what I call the basic education. Basically, everybody is expected to learn the Quran, to read and write. Now, the second stage would be specialization. Those that have learned the Quran, could read and write and so on, could go into other professions. Farmers, they could be traders, they could do other things, isn't it?
Astronomers.
No, but now you have the second crop, isn't it? The next stage of the secondary, isn't it? And the tertiary education that involves those graduates, isn't it? From the local schools, now going into higher studies. They stay within, some of them travel for years to go to Saudi Arabia, to go to Egypt, to go to become real scholars. Some of them staying there, some of them coming back. Now to stay with the emirs and the chiefs and other things, isn't it? Providing advice as advisors, religious advisors, as senior teachers again, teaching the other generations. So it has been working as a system. But somehow the dislocation started happening, isn't it, over a period. Increase in population, neglect, a lot of other factors that had been going on, isn't it, to a point that it becomes a broken system. Yeah. That now people will have to look at and see how do we address it, and address it in a sustainable and serious manner, not just cosmetics when people talk about, the issues, isn't it, in a very superficial manner.
So this means that many scholars have benefited from Al-Majiri system when it was working.
So many.
And
the classical sense.
Classical sense of it, yes. Let's go to Kano, where we have Salihu Tanko Yakasai, special advisor to the governor of that state on media. Kano is a very big state. And Kano city as well, of course, has a population that is higher than any other city in this country. And I'm sure that when your governor hit the headline last week talking about the Al-Majiri and the action the government intends to take, many Nigerians welcomed that development. Let's have your own view of the Al-Majiri system that has failed. Of course, the UBEC chair has already given us a good backgrounding as to the intent of Al-Majiri system, which derailed, in the course of time. What's your own view? And again, why has your state government taken the action it did?
Well, the pronouncement did happen last week, but I can categorically tell you that His Excellency Dr. Abdullahi Umar Ganduje has started planning much earlier than last week about how to address this issue of out-of-school children who are mostly the Al-Majiris. As we are all aware, or if I can take us back to his swearing-in speech during his inauguration for his second term, that was when he made the pronouncement that education in Kano is not only free, but also compulsory from primary level up to secondary level, and that has to also address the issue of the Al-Majiri system. And I can tell you that even before then, His Excellency Dr. Abdullahi Umar Ganduje has already, even in his first tenure has already started laying the foundation for addressing this issue of out-of-school children by establishing one of the first things that he did more than 34 years ago was the establishment of an agency called Sangaya Islamia and Quranic Schools Management Board, which is solely responsible for the regulation of, if you may, of this type of schools. So that agency is responsible for taking the data. So far, they have registered over 13,000 of these Al-Majri schools in Kano State. So, but not only to take the data and the registration, but also to help in planning. And this is what the result of what we are seeing today. So that from that time to today, when the policy is now being implemented, a lot of things have gone into play. But most importantly, what I want people to understand is that we are not just His Excellency Dr. Abdullahi Umar Ganduje is not just only interested in seeing these kids off the street, not begging, you understand, but there's more to it. He wants to see them in school, not just learning the Quranic school, which is the Quranic education, which is traditionally what they are doing, but also the integration of Western education into the system. You know, without taking them, it's not a must that they have to go to primary school. They can be in their schools and then be also learning English, maths, general studies, so that they can be able to have that basics that Dr. Boboy was talking about. So that is the whole essence. And there are a number of things that have been done. It's not just a policy statement. One of the things that he has done is that he has so far taken data of these students out of about 1 million out-of-school children in Kano State, according to UNICEF data. The Kano State government has realized that about half of them are those that are Al-Majris. So they have taken their data, their names, their states, the schools that they go to in each and every ward. And then the next thing is that those that are not in schools, His Excellency just 2 days ago inspected pilot schools, pilot boarding Al-Majri schools, one in each of the senatorial zones, in partnership with the federal government, that they are going to take these students that are not in any school, just roaming around the streets, and take them to these boarding schools, where they will be fed, they will be accommodated, they will be fed and everything. So it's not just to ban them on the street and then, you know, just for the beautification of the city or something like that. No, it's a fundamental human right. And then secondly, His Excellency has employed, the state government has employed up to 8,000 new students just a couple of weeks ago. These new teachers, 8,000 of them, the whole purpose of this is to be able to send them to these Quranic schools, to be able to go and teach these kids the subjects that I listed, English, maths, and general studies. The whole aim is to integrate them into the system. But not only that, most importantly, His Excellency wants a situation whereby these people can become, like he always uses the term, can become an asset to the state government, where they can be able to be productive in the near future. They can be able to add value to the society. To raise the point that Dr. Boboy has said, some of this, the system is not as bad as it is. My own father, Alej Tonkoya Kasei, who was once at his own childhood, was also an Al-Majri. He went to Hardawa village in present-day Bauchi State and studied in one of the Sangaya system. And that is how he was able to gain his own Islamic studies, Islamic knowledge, and up to the extent that he is very vast in not just Quran, but Hadith and other aspects. So this is what Dr. Abdullahi Umar Ganduje is trying to do. He's trying to make sure that these kids are an asset to the people of Kano and Nigeria at large, and not just a liability to the state.
All right. Thank you very much, Salihu Tanko Yakasai, for your opening comments. We have a number of questions that we're going to ask you with regard to what's playing out in Kano. But earlier we introduced Miriama Dikwa, who is the education specialist at the Bauchi Field Office of UNICEF. You can see